Mr. Johnny Thomas.
Go ahead.
Mr. Deontay Thomas.
Present.
Mr. Greer Webb.
Present.
Vice Chair Genevieve Sims.
Present.
Mr. Sean Ingram.
Sean, you're muted.
I got you, Mr. Ingram. Mr. David Bland.
Present.
Mr. Gerald Tucano.
Present.
And Chair Sheila Alamin Khashoggi.
And present. And I want to acknowledge Councilman Jonathan Milton is joining us tonight. And Dr. Caesar is also, and we have Travis McCullum and Demetrius Edwards. So
Thank you,
we are
ma'am.
first gonna approve the,
Sheila, may I ask, Travis, with whom are you?
So I am the newly hired community analyst with the Office of Equity and Inclusion.
Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome.
I'm sorry, I meant to do that, but I kept going.
I was going to say Travis is replacing Marquita Mbonu, who used to be with us. And this
Okay.
is third day of the job.
Okay. Well, nice to have you, Travis, at our meeting. Okay, as we move forward, the approval of the agenda for April 28th, today, 2020.
Move its approval.
David approved. Any second?
Second.
Any questions?
No, ma'am.
All approved, just say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved for tonight. Approve of minutes from March 24th, 2021.
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second it.
Mr. Bland.
Any questions? All in favor for the minutes of March 24th? Everybody raise their hand. Those that,
Aye.
okay. Thank you. We have the chair
Sheila.
report.
Sheila, may I raise an issue? I don't think it makes any difference. But when we nominated officers at our last meeting, you were shown as the nominee, the nominator, and the chair can't do that. And if it doesn't make any difference, I don't care. I'm just calling it out.
Okay, I also gave people a chance to nominate anyone else, and no one
No.
said anything.
No. The chair
Okay.
just, but whatever.
Okay. It's so noted. We're gonna move forward to the chair's report. We're gonna ask Ms. Genevieve to do the chair, vice chair. Ms. Genevieve is gonna do all the chair report tonight. Ms. Genevieve, it's in your hands.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to start with something that is considered old business, but because we received a response last night, I'm moving it under the chair's report. Each of you received today a copy of the police chief's response to our request. We had asked that we receive a response by April the 7th. That response came in last night. Dr. Caesar has put the response on the screen in case anyone has not had an opportunity to review that. So are there any questions about the memo that we received from the chief, or is there any discussion regarding that memo?
I have a comment.
Thank you, David.
Well, first of all, I certainly understand and appreciate the position that she took regarding the confidentiality contract, which they probably had with the consultant. However, that does not prohibit us from asking, moving to go into executive session so that we too could experience that same privilege. I personally think that that is an affront to this board. It makes us in many respects toothless, as I mentioned in an email earlier, and it bothers me. I mean, we continue as a board to be not responded to. So it bothers me greatly.
Do you have a suggestion, David, as to how we address that concern?
I think we ought to go in, not this moment, but I think we should go into executive session and or tell them that we're going to go into executive session and we want to see those dadgum policies, because
Right, now,
there are several of them that directly affect what happened on in last May. And if we as a board are going to effectively relate to the community, we must be able to say to them what recommended as to standards. And what did was standard practice. At least that's what their presumption, what they're proposing to us. Now, the consultant raised some questions about that, but we haven't had the opportunity to relate those policies to what the consultant said. So we're still in the blind.
all right, but let me understand what you're saying to us. You're recommending that we go into executive session to review the policy, am I correct?
That is correct, but
And
not
so-
tonight.
Well, we
We-
don't have the policy, so.
Exactly, right.
So we can't go into executive session. So if I'm trying to be I would like to be very clear in terms of what we take back. So
Well,
can you
yeah.
put it in the form of a motion as to what it is that you are actually proposing for us to get the policy?
Right. I move that we communicate with the RPD, that we understand their position regarding their policy with the consultant, and that it is our intention to go into executive session so that we might review those policies privately, and that we want to know when we might receive those policies so that we can call ourselves into executive session.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I have a question, and I don't know if that's appropriate at this point in time or not.
I believe that we first have to have a second before we can entertain the discussion.
Hopefully you can all hear me. I too have a question, but I will second the motion so that we can enter discussion.
All right, thank you, Greer. All right, now, I'm sorry, Sean? No, I'm sorry, Deontay, you had a question.
Yes, ma'am. And David, Howard saying we're going to go into executive session force their hand or change anything in regards to them sharing that policy with us. I think we're spinning our wheels on at this point. And if the chief is saying she's not going to give it to us, then and educate me if I'm completely off on this, but I don't see how that changes anything.
Well, in the communication she sent, she said that she referenced the fact that we were a public body and that we were that our meetings were public. And I'm simply calling her hand on it and saying, no, we'll make it private. Let us see the policies.
Okay.
I believe there was someone else who had a question. Greer, I believe it was you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Yes, it was more a question for leadership. I do concur with David, and I think it's going to be just a little tricky, but I do think that we are in a position to do what David is saying, and we could circle back to the details. My question is more so for you, Madam Vice Chair and Madam Chair. I mean, that is this response acceptable? Part one. And part two of the question is, did we get a response to our demands at our March meeting by our deadline? And if not, what does that say about how we're going to enforce any recommendations that we have for the police department or city going forward?
Well, whether or not this response is appropriate or responsive to what we asked is really up to you guys. It's your interpretation of this memo that we received last night. As to the second part of your question, and I'm sorry, I lost it. Would you go back to the second part, Greer? I apologize.
No, that's okay. I guess it's not really relevant. My comment is that this is not very responsive. This is what we've been hearing for months, and I believe that I'm not sure if this is what David was asking, but I think we need to, and again, this has been recommended previously. I think our board needs to send a letter again demanding that we have access to these policies, and for the police department to provide some type of, legal ramification for why we don't. It seems like we're doing back and forth, and it's been months now. And so I guess I'm asking the board, what can we do? Or even Councilor Melton, for that matter.
I believe that this is the response to your second part of your question, or your second question was, this is the response that they are giving us and that we had requested by April 7th. So this is their response based upon our meeting with the city manager a couple of days ago, which I'll explain a little later on. So yes, this is their full response to that. If I'm understanding your motion or your second to David's motion, you're suggesting that we send them a second letter. I'm sorry, are you withdrawing that?
Yes, I'm going to withdraw that and ask a follow-up question, and then I'll be quiet. So are you saying that this came 20 days later than our deadline?
That is correct.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for that clarification.
Yeah. Any other discussion regarding this motion? All right.
Johnny's got his hand up.
Johnny have their hands raised. I don't know if you're able to see their.
I can't see it because of the screen sharing. Johnny?
Yes, ma'am. I sent a in fact, let me put it. I sent out something to everybody when I was doing some research earlier before this meeting about under North Carolina statutes, you are allowed to see records not deemed appropriate for the public if you go into a confidential, if you go into a closed session, then you can discuss this. But I guess at the same time, if you're going to ask ask RPD to give you something that is considered confidential, you have to let them know that we are going to discuss it, or if there's a subcommittee that's going to look at it, who's going to do it in a confidential meeting, and then that the aspects of it would be shared, but not the specific information. You won't reveal nothing that would jeopardize any member of the police force or endanger the public, but you might recommend a policy, but we would have to word it in such a way. I sent it to you when I was researching. I think I sent it to everybody.
Yeah, the only thing that you didn't include was what the specific statute was that you were referencing. And,
okay,
and it would be appreciated if you would do that.
Okay,
It's part of the motion, Johnny, is that we go into executive session to review it. So if we sent a letter to the city, to the police chief, we would notify her that the policy would only be reviewed in executive session.
Right.
Well, I support any motion for that.
All right. So any other discussion regarding this motion?
Gerald has his question, his hand up.
I'm sorry, Gerald. I apologize. Gerald.
Yeah, I think we're getting a little sidetracked on productivity, and I understand some of the frustration with not getting a look at all the policies we'd like to, because our basic process was that we wanted to gather all information that's relevant to what we wanted to look at policies first, and then having all the information, then as a group approve certain recommendations, and that way we're not going to make recommendations that have already made changes on them already. But since we just simply have to adjust how the process goes by simply not having information in those and make the recommendations on the information we do have, which we have a number of concerns from a lot of board members on different policies that they would like to have amended or addressed or clarified. We can simply go through with those without those existing policies. And if there's information on those policies that can be released that the department says, hey, what you guys are proposing is actually not confidential. It is included here. We can show it's included here. Okay, they may do so otherwise, but it won't. If we simply kind of get back onto just adjusting our process a little bit and using what policies are available to us and prioritize, we can make the policy recommendations that I feel is going to address each of our initial concerns when we ask for initial concerns for policies of the RP policies itself. So I'm just kind of saying on a practical view, we can still go through with policy changes just with less information than we would like to have as before.
All right.
Geneva?
Deontay?
Yeah, and just to follow up on Mr. Thomas's point, and I guess also Gerald, yeah, if we go to this executive session as envisioned, I am certain if it's a confidential session, we'll have to sign an NDA or whatever is included with that in order to see those policies. And then if we can't say anything, say we see a policy that is abhorrent, it's horrid, that we want to change, then we can't even change that policy because wouldn't that be a violation of any confidentiality or any NDA that we're forced to sign? So I guess I'm asking, is there a point? Like, even in the best case scenario, if they open it up to us, then we're still precluded from doing anything with it.
That's a very good point. Thank you. Are there any other hands that are raised that I'm not aware of?
Genevieve?
Yes.
David? My only comment about all of this is I certainly understand the points that have been made. However, we have been wrestling with the concerns that initiated all of this now since January at least. And we're now into April, going into May, and we haven't made any more progress on those issues than we did in January. Now, if in fact we don't feel that we can, and I disagree with you, Deontay, in terms of not being able to articulate a policy, once we know what the policy is and we know what the discrepancies were between what the consultant said and what that policy says, then we certainly have the prerogative to make a recommendation to the RPD and to the city with the changes that we think, with the policy that we think ought to be adopted, irrespective of what the existing policy is. I mean, for example, how the interaction occurred between the RPD and the Sheriff's Department, because it was perfectly clear that the Sheriff's Department deputies precipitated the first confrontation. Now, what happened after that in terms of the RPD starting to fire projectiles and using out-of-date, tear gas, that's another issue, and one that we ought to be able to address. But, you know, I've made my point, and I'm
then
sorry.
I'm going to close this discussion and ask for a vote on the motion. I'm sorry, Greer, I apologize. I saw your hand. Greer, you had one last comment, and then we'll close.
I just wanted to clarify with someone, either on the leadership team or Gerald. So we do have a running list of policy recommendations or policy changes for public policies that are not hidden from us. And if so, was that in a separate email, or I'm trying to make sure I understood Gerald earlier?
If I can clarify that, we received as part of, and if you look at the chief's response to us, she lists the 10 policies that are confidential. All other policies of the department are public, and we have access to those, as does any member of the public.
Right. Follow up. Gerald was, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like Gerald said we had policy recommendations or recommended changes for some public policies that we could tackle and address. And I'm asking where the list of those are, because I thought many that we wanted to address are in those list of 10 that we cannot see. Is there a
Gerald, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, we're
He's frozen.
not at the policy recommendation phase, but remember we asked all of you to give us your concerns regarding the protests and 21 CP, the reports, what your concerns were. And then we correlated all those concerns, and then those that had the most common, those were the priority ones. On that list, the vast majority of them, we can go through and start looking at specific policies to make recommendations to the department on the current concerns list that all of you have given us that we collated.
And I'll follow up with Gerald and say that under our work plan for this year, we decided we weren't looking at more, we were looking at least 3 policies. We've identified those 3. Those are the 3 that we've been focused on. And so all of the other policies we can do in the future. Okay. So I'm going to end this discussion and call for a vote on the existing motion. Does anyone need the motion repeated? Okay.
I think it would be helpful to repeat the motion. It was David's, I believe.
Jeremy, can you repeat the motion for us?
Yes, ma'am. The motion that was presented by Mr. Bland is that we gather in an executive session so that we can get the private policies revealed to us. Correct me, Mr. Bland, if I misspeak, but that's what I have on my note.
Well said.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. I only see one hand raised.
I
I
believe
see
it
Mr.
was
Bland,
Sean.
Mr.
Three.
Ingram, and Mr. Webb,
He-
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, how are you raising your hands? Are you raising it on the screen or?
Both. Folks are doing both.
Okay, well, tell me, Jeremy, can you tell me how many hands are raised?
Yes, ma'am. I see 4. Hold on.
4 in
I
favor?
see Mr. Johnny Thomas and Sean Ingram and Mr. Bland.
All right,
Johnny.
all of those opposed to the motion, please raise your hand.
Before we do that, would you all please put your hands down, those who, thank you. Where would you please put your hand down, please, and also Mr. Ingram, thank you. Madam Vice Chair, please continue.
Okay. Can you see my hand being raised, Jeremy?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. How many are opposed to the motion?
4.
5 of us, Madam Vice Chair.
5 opposed?
Mhm.
All right, thank you. Motion fails. The next thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is we had, the chair and I had a meeting with the consulting firm that is conducting the search for our new chief. And I sent to you a copy of our proposed list of responses for consideration by that firm. I'm looking for my notes right now. Thank you, Dr. Caesar, for putting that up. And what I indicated in my response to you was that we did not cover in our listing those areas that the consulting firm is already considering. And those areas include everything from transparency to openness, promotion of community safety, accountability, reduction in crime, honesty, integrity, accountability, evaluation or a person who values community relations. And Sheila and I indicated to the consultant that we would provide him after our meeting tonight, our listing of items to consider, which is why I put the list together that I sent you. but I wanted to bring your attention to a couple of things that are on that list. I tried to take into consideration the questions that you guys had provided us, and I put together two what I call position statements you'll see toward the end of that list that we wanted to ask the consultant to have the candidates give us position statements on community policing and repeated use of force violation and how they would enforce violations by officers who were definitely guilty of multiple use of force violations. So I didn't know how you felt about asking for for position statements. So I wanted to bring that up first.
I move we do it. I think it's a great addition.
Okay, good. Thank you, David. Anyone opposed to using asking for position statements? And then the other thing that I added, and this was something that just came to me in the middle of the night, which was to ask that at the time of the interview, that we present a case study, at least one, to the candidates on the spot, no advance notice of what the case study is going to be, so that we could get a really good sense of that candidate. When they know that they're being interviewed, they know that what the questions are typically going to be, and they have their stock answers. And I don't think we're going to get a good sense of who these people really are unless we come at them with something that they're not expecting. And I thought a case study would be just that thing. And a case study could cover some of those areas that you guys want answered. Like, for example, Johnny is very concerned right now about mental health and a number of people on the street having mental health issues and how the police are actually interacting with them. That could be included in the case study somehow. So how do you feel about developing a case study to be used during the interview process?
Good idea.
Thank you again, David.
I think it's a good idea also, and maybe I missed this, but could you clarify, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, what our role is going to be in that interview process?
Yes, I was going to get to that. I definitely am going to get to that, okay? So thank you, Greer.
Before we get to that, let me ask you, when you all met with the folks you met with, was there any discussion about the issue of police officer immunity? Was there any discussion about officer intervention on officer?
Okay, David, let me interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
Gerald had suggested for our first interaction with the consultant that we feel them out, see where they're coming from, see what they have developed, and not basically reveal our hand at this point in time, okay?
That's
And
fine.
so that's the approach that we used when we sat down with the consultant. We were trying to determine what traits and skills he was looking for on our behalf, on behalf of the city. So no, we did not go into any of that. If those are things that you would like us to explore, I'm going to suggest that you either add them to the list that we have here tonight, or put them in the case study, or ask for a position statement.
I would agree with the position statement. Whatever you all think, I just think we need to know what their head is in terms of those two issues, just like we're going to ask about community policing and community involvement. I mean,
All right,
those are
so-
the most critical issues.
All right, so I want to make sure I understand. So you want a position statement on police officer immunity, personal immunity?
Yes.
And what's the second one?
Officer intervention on officer behavior. I don't know how you say that, but
I
maybe
understand what
Gerald
you're
knows
saying
that.
now.
Are you
Um,
speaking about the duty to intervene? David?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
And I believe the immunity question is qualified immunity.
Correct.
is that what you want me to ask on qualified immunity? Or do you
Yes.
just want me to make it a general question on personal immunity?
They're two different things.
I
Qualified.
know they are. I know they are, but I'm just asking you, do you want to get that specific or do you want to be general?
I'm sorry, I was clarifying what David was mentioning. That hot topic today is qualified immunity. I haven't heard great debates over personal immunity. I don't know if that's being challenged. So I'm asking David, I guess, what he meant there, just to confirm.
I would vote for the qualified.
Okay. You know that's governed by statute.
No, then if it's governed by statute, then we don't, it's not an issue.
That's what,
Just how do you ask a potential chief of police what he or she is going to say to their officers about not letting another officer do what Chauvin did? How do you ask that? And whatever the answer is, then that's what we think, that's what we ought to have.
all right, so you're dropping the immunity, am I correct?
Whatever, I don't care.
Madam Vice Chair, I just need some clarity from Mr. Bland, please, so I know what to take note of. Thank you.
My point, Jeremy, is I think we need to ask the potential clients, the interviewees, what their
Yes, sir.
position is relative to officer intervention when another officer is abridging the rights of an offender.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other suggestions for position statements? Okay, thank you. Then let me ask you,
Greer.
Madam Vice Chair, Greenwell has his hand up.
Greer.
I would like to know their position. I don't think it was one of the two listed bullets that was flashed up on our screen on separate mental health units to respond to unarmed incidents.
All right, I've got that. Any others? Jeremy, I'm depending on you to tell me whose hand is raised.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Webb has his hand again, Madam Vice
Okay,
Chair.
Greer.
Thank you. I would also like to know their position on using tear gas and their general position on responding to mass protests.
Any others?
Johnny.
Mr. Thomas, Johnny Thomas.
I only have one thing. Would the vice chair or the chair, if the consultant was amendable to letting y'all sit in on the interviews? That's just,
Oh, I'm going to get to that, Johnny.
okay,
okay.
thank you, sorry.
Anything else that you want to add to this? All right, then let me just give you a suggestion too. On the case studies, we need someone to develop some case studies. Who would like to be responsible for developing at least one case study? Or which of you would like to be responsible for developing a case study?
And the Pacific case study would be?
Whatever you come up with.
Gerald.
Mr. Tatano.
I'll be willing to work with somebody on that.
All right, Gerald is, and who else do we have volunteering?
Mr. Thomas.
Johnny. All right, anyone else? All right, thank you, guys. And I've got your hand, Johnny. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me give you a brief on the meeting with the consultant, which we thought was very interesting. At the time that we met with him, hold on, let me find all my notes. One of the things that we found out is that he had been working for about a week or two with the city having sent out a request for proposals to identify a consultant. And his firm was selected. That firm has lots of experience. Gary Peterson is the person that we met with, and he's the president of the firm. He has 27 years of service as a police officer. And they've conducted major searches in major cities. San Francisco, Dallas, Seattle, San Jose, Sacramento, Kansas City, Nashville, to mention just a few. As of the date that we met with them last week, we had 1,374 responses to the survey that was on the city's website. And we were encouraged to ask others to respond to the survey. So if you have not personally responded, please do so, because they're using the survey responses to develop the interview questions. Now, here's where Sheila and I were both surprised at this. The nature of our involvement with the selection of the chief has not been decided yet.
Has
So,
it even been discussed?
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Has it even been discussed?
That we did not know, but it has not been decided yet. Sheila and I also had a meeting with the city manager yesterday or the day before, I can't ever remember. And during that conversation, she indicated to us that there will be at least 4 panels that will conduct the interviews of the candidates. And we will be on one of those panels. Now, how many slots we will have on that one panel, we don't know. She doesn't know if there'll only be one of us or if there'll be 2 of us. But at this point, that has not even been determined. But there are 300 individuals from which these 4 panels, I'm sorry, there are 300 individuals that they are making contact with. There will be 4 panels, an internal panel, external panel, and we will more than likely be on what's called the external panel, since we are not internal to the city. But our knowledge of who the finalists are, I'm sorry, who the candidates are, won't be known until we're almost at the final level due to confidentiality. There is no way that anybody is going to know who has applied because they want to respect the confidentiality of all of the candidates who are applying. Only the consultant will know who has applied. The consultant will screen the candidates based upon all the feedback that he gets from these various surveys and from his interactions with various, what do they call them? What kind of groups did they call them, Sheila? Groups like ours and other community groups. For example,
Stockholders.
Stockholders, thank you. He had already met with members of the business community. He had met with some police chiefs, university police chiefs, council members, mental health providers, victim advocates. He was meeting after us with faith leaders, and he was meeting after us with representatives of or advocates for the homeless. Based upon all the information that he has provided, which includes our listing that we've just gone through, he will come up with all of the questions that he will use to screen the applicants. Once he has screened them, he's going to be presenting some candidates to the city for consideration. And that'll whittle down some more before we even become involved. So our involvement is going to be at what I call a later stage in this whole process. The application period ends on the 14th of May. If necessary, they will extend it. At this point, they're not really sure if they're going to need to extend it, but they will. He anticipates that the selection process, and which means the first round of interviews of what I call the finalists, will begin around the end of May. And so our involvement, if we are involved, probably will not take place other than this submission of information to them as to what we are expecting, our involvement probably won't take place prior to the end of May. That was not what we were expecting to hear when we met with him. Sheila and I will send our list to him tomorrow, and then Sheila and I will meet with him again next week.
Could you all say to the person you were talking to that that wasn't what you expected to be able, that wasn't what you...
We made it very clear to him that this is not what we thought was going to happen. We made it clear to him that we were under the impression that we were going to be involved from the development of the job description throughout the process.
Excellent.
Okay, so all of that was made known to him. And when we met with the city manager on Monday, I reminded her, and I have to tell you, we met with the city manager for the second time because the first time we were scheduled to meet, I was in an accident and could not make the meeting because I had to go to the hospital. But so I basically was expressing to her on Monday the dissatisfaction that I was experiencing based upon the fact that we were led to believe something and that was not true. And basically what the city manager said to me, or said to us, is that because these people who are applying are already working for other cities, they do not want anybody to know who they are because they don't want any leaks out there, which is perfectly understandable. If I'm applying for a job and I don't want my employer to know that I'm applying for a job, I don't want you advertising that I applied for your job. So the sensitive nature of who the candidates are is part of the reason that there will be limited involvement beyond the city manager and the consultant. And then the stakeholders will come in later. Will be part of what they call the stakeholder engagement process, which again, until more restrictions are lifted, will be a virtual process. Greer.
Thank you. Could I direct a question toward Councilor Melton quickly, since he's with us?
Sure.
Councilor Melton, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Sims, but I didn't hear you mention city council much in this process. So I guess my two questions for you, Councilor Melton, are, one, how was this firm selected? They don't seem to have a very diverse executive board at all, which is concerning to me. And B, have you or would you be willing to voice to the council an increased desire for our board's involvement with these selections?
I don't know the answer to your first question. So I guess by default, the answer would be that council was not involved in hiring the search firm. But, you know, well, y'all probably already know this, but the city manager is in charge.
I'm sorry, Councilor Melton, I didn't hear you there. Did you say city council was not involved in any way in selecting the firm that's now looking for our new police chief?
To my knowledge, I wasn't involved. So if it was a council decision, I wasn't included in it. I'm assuming it wasn't. I think the city manager hired the firm. I have spoken to him though, as part of his stakeholder engagement. And can y'all not hear me?
Mm-hmm.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. I spoke to him and I made my opinions clear on what I think our next police chief ought to be. So hopefully he'll take some of my thoughts into consideration as well. And the second part is, me personally, yes, I do think that your board needs to be involved in the process. So whatever I can do from there. I was planning to sort of, well, I'll make more general comments when I'm called upon. But to answer those two questions, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding that? And let me just tell you what the 4 community panels are. There's an external panel, and that's the one that we will probably be on. There's an internal panel, an executive panel, and a law enforcement panel. Those will be the 4 panels that will be interviewing the final candidates. Any other questions about that?
Did you all make any comments to the person you were talking to relative to the lack of diversity within the consulting firm? I mean,
I was not aware that there was any lack of diversity within that firm.
Well, if you look at their website, you don't see the 3 white guys.
And are we,
Jeremy?
yes, ma'am, when we speak diversity, are we speaking of race or diversity of thought? Like, what do we mean by the word diversity? So I would love
I'm
for,
talking about diversity in race, because many of our problems are directly related to how the police department is interacting with the Black community. Dadgummit, if we can't be assured that they know how to deal with that, then we're
Okay.
buying a pig in the poke.
Then let me just say, it's a little late now to talk about this election because it's been done. But I will tell you that what we were advised is that if you want to find out more about this firm, research it at publicsectorsearch.com.
I did.
You should be able to identify the communities in which they have made selections or assisted in the selection of chiefs. And based upon what Gary was saying to us, their track record is 70% of the persons that they have recommended for chief positions have been either minorities or women. But again, you can check their website for just that information, and it should be clearly there. Now, we're running out of time, so I want to move beyond this. I'm sorry, who was that?
Greer Webb wants to be recognized, Madam Vice Chair.
I have two comments because I believe there are some pressing issues. My first, I'll try and be brief. My first is a motion to extend the meeting at least 15 minutes so we can get to some current events.
I'm not going to honor that at this time. I'm not going to entertain that motion at this time. I would like to.
Is that how Robert's Rules of Order work?
Well, I'm just saying that at this time, I'm going to honor the schedule that we have and move on and see then whether or not we need any extra time.
Okay. My second point, and that response was a bit concerning, but my second point is, I guess, a question for Madam Chair, since you were involved in this conversation. Was anyone that was elected by the citizens of the city of Raleigh involved in the selection of this outside firm to choose our next police chief?
Again, the city manager was the person that is in charge of the police department. So to your question, no. The process is the city manager has that authority, and then it trickles down to the council, which he had already they had their interview and police department had their interviews. So far as the citizens, no.
Okay, and just to clarify, you're not saying that council interviewed this firm, because I believe Councilor.
No, council did not interview this firm, no. Only
Can I just add something?
Yes, please, Jonathan. Jonathan.
I was not surprised that we were not asked to select the firm or be involved, because the city manager, the council hires 3 people: the manager, the attorney, and the clerk. And so the city manager, as the chief executive officer of the city of Raleigh, is in charge of personnel. And so Marshall Adams David will be the person who hires the next police chief. How she wants to handle that process will be her decision. I will say that we just recently hired Marshall Adams David, and I cannot tell you how much of a godsend she has been to me my first year on council. I think that she understands these issues. I know her heart is in the right place, and I have a great deal of confidence in Marshall's ability to make this hire, and I have a great deal of confidence in her ability to bring on the consulting firm. So, as a derivative, I think, as someone who was elected, I supported Marshall's candidacy for city manager, and it trickles down from there. And I cannot say enough good things about Marshall Adams David. And I would not say that if I didn't feel that. And I don't know that I would be saying that at a different time if a different person were sitting there. But with Marshall sitting there, I have complete confidence.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to say one thing as chair. When we had our meetings, she assured us that the advocate groups that have been pushing for this, that will be involved. So I have confidence that she will reach out, or if she haven't already reached out to those groups. So she is considering the community. So we made sure and we asked, and she reassured us that the advocate groups that really was starting to push on some things will be involved in the next chief of police.
And she also assured us that she is very supportive of this board.
Yes.
And has a track record of that support. I'm going to move us along because of the
Yes.
time consideration. And Madam Chair, I don't know if you made the board aware of this, but we have a city council liaison who has been appointed. So I'm going to adjust the agenda just a little bit and ask if Jonathan Melton is our new city council liaison. And hopefully we will be working very closely with him. Jonathan, do you wish to say something?
Yeah, a couple things. I don't think the mayor has made my appointment official yet, but I have expressed my desire to be the liaison, and I'm here because I wanted to just introduce myself. I think I know most of you anyway, but I wanted to just say that I really support this work of this board, and I want y'all to be successful. So when I am the liaison, even when I'm not the liaison, I've told some of y'all individually that I am here to help. And as the liaison, I'm going to be here to help. And so I don't think I will attend all of your meetings because I think that your work will be different if I'm sitting in the room listening, but I will be at the meetings that you ask me to be at, and I will be here to listen to concerns or find solutions to problems. I campaigned in support of, police reform issues and oversight issues. This is work I really care very deeply about. I supported a police accountability board. We enacted a police advisory board, and there is a difference.
Right.
By law, we're not allowed to enact the type of board that I would like us to have, which is why we went ahead and created your board to advise on policy and to make recommendations on fair policies, while also trying to work to get the extra authority that I think all cities should have. And so, I'm still working with the Wake County Senator who is introducing legislation to try to give oversight and subpoena power to these types of advisory boards. But I think it can be a yes and, because in the meantime, the work that y'all are doing is very important. Looking through the existing policies and making fair policy recommendations, working to build trust with the community and elevate community concerns, and being a part of the police hire, all of that's really important work too. So I see it as a yes and I do want this board to be very successful. So that is my goal. It was not difficult, but it was interesting sitting through the conversations earlier because, I like to raise my hand, jump right in. And I was like, I'm not on the board. I'm a liaison. I'm going to wait till someone asks you a question. But I liked the comment about, I'm a very yes and person. So why don't we look at the policies we have and start making recommendations there, and then let's keep working on figuring out how to get access to other information we think is important. So I'm happy to help y'all through that discussion if necessary. I will tell you that, in my opinion, the idea is that y'all look at everything that the outside agency looked at and offer additional recommendations. So however we have to make that work, we will make that work. But in the meantime, I think your work is very important, and I hope that y'all can, come together, disagree when you have to disagree, but find more areas where you agree, and let's really make this a positive change for the city. And I just also want to echo the comments that I'm going to use my words carefully. I have great confidence in Marshall Adams David. I will tell you that there was a lot that happened last year and last summer that was deeply disturbing to me, and things that I disagree with. And I tried to be as vocal and transparent and visible as possible during that time. And the person I was talking to the most on the phone was Marshall. And she gets these issues, and I have great confidence in her ability to make this police hire with the input from y'all and the community. So that's all I wanted to say, is that I'm here, I support y'all, I want the board to be successful. I'm not going to jump in all the time and have y'all feel like you're being micromanaged, but I'm here when you need me.
Thank you very much. And we welcome you and hope that the mayor will formalize the appointment. But while you're here, do you have any information regarding the appointment of the replacement? We lost 2 members. Do you have any information about replacements?
So I know that when we created the board, we wanted to be very deliberate about skill sets. And so I know that at the last meeting, when the vacancies were brought up, there was a conversation about making sure that we replace skill sets that we were missing. And I think the attorney appointee is one person who left, but there are other attorneys that are on your board who may have been at-large folks. And so, you know, this is a new process for y'all. It's a new process for us too. So figuring out how to make the appointments is, I think, something that's going to take a meeting or two, just to make sure that we have the right set of skills and lived experiences on the board so that y'all, you know, have the resources you need. So I don't have any more clarification on that other than we were trying to figure out what vacancies were open. We thought it was an attorney and we realized there already are attorneys. And so I think we need to look through, and we had a lot of folks who were interested. A lot of folks ended up being interested. And so we're probably going to go back to that list and just see who's still interested.
All right, we have a mental health professional that's missing.
Okay, that's helpful.
That's one that definitely needs to be filled. Okay.
I also serve as the liaison to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission, which is another set of issues I care a lot about and I try to be very vocal about. And what I usually do with that group is I meet with their chair or vice chair probably twice a month, and issues like that that need to be raised at the table or that need to be to my attention, they'll either send me an email or they'll bring it up during our meeting. So if you want to do something like that as well, just to say, hey, this is what we need as an appointee, that helps, you know, one less ball that's in the air kind of that I have to keep on top of. Yeah.
We can do that. We can do that. Again, thank you for being with us tonight too.
Welcome.
Yeah, I'm going to move through this agenda. Are there any committee reports? If not, any new business?
Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
I sent an email per the chair's request, Greer and I did, regarding 2 policy statements which we thought the board should consider. One is moot now regarding the George Floyd situation, but we also included a statement about the problems that are now occurring with Asian Americans. And I strongly feel that we should consider that policy.
Well, you know, Jonathan just mentioned what our responsibilities are. So I just have to ask you, where does the Asian American policy fall within the responsibilities that we've been assigned by the city council?
Well, if we have the kinds of things happen in our community that have happened in other communities regarding Asian Americans, I would think that it would be appropriate for our board to say up front, before horrible things like that happen, for our board to say up front that we are very concerned and supportive of that community.
I'm saying, where does it fall within the policies that we are to review? That's what I'm asking you, David.
Well, I was under the impression we have more responsibility than just policy.
Jonathan, how would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, I think it's a good intentioned request, obviously. And I don't want to influence how the board will vote or decide things. I will say that, you know, being on this board is, the intent is for it to be police related issues, fair policy creation, and community sort of bridge building. Do I think that that statement is a worthwhile statement? Of course. Maybe it's something that would be better to come from our Human Relations Commission. I don't know. That would be up to y'all. But if the question is for the mission of the board, I think the mission statement is that y'all are responsible or tasked with the police related issues and policy regarding the police department and building relationships in the community.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Madam
John,
Vice Chair, both Mr. Thomas and Mr. Webb wants to be recognized.
All right, Johnny?
I think I agree with you, Madam Chair. I think we need to be very careful about specifying. I think we are here to deal with the police and the community as a whole. But when we talk about the community of color, that really encompasses everybody, including Asian Americans. I don't want to get on a thing where we start specifying this group of Mexicans or Asians, because I don't want to offend another group that says, well, why wouldn't you say something about us when there's stuff happening to us also? And we also have to remember that what's going on with them issues are not the police doing it. These are people in the community who we have no control over and no rights to tell what to do are committing these acts. So like the councilman said, we're here to deal with police on citizens, not citizens on citizens. And I don't want to get caught up in anything like that, but I want to focus on the police and how they're dealing with the community as a whole, and especially the community of colors. I think I've sent y'all an email. I'll make this real quick. I've sent y'all several emails and events that I have been watching over the last few weeks about interactions with RPD and what they have been doing, pulling people over. I watched a woman get verbally abused outside of what we've watched on the news. This is the issues that I think is most important that we should be addressing if we're going to address anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Greer?
Yes, thank you. I guess, going to ask David a question. I know our time is dwindling, but I believe we were also commissioned to write a statement about policing, similar to our Breonna Taylor statement about the outcome of the Chauvin trial, and a message to the Raleigh community should protests occur. Of course, now we have Elizabeth City, and I guess my motion was unheard to go, further so we could discuss current events. That's what I was alluding to. I'm not sure if those statements were ever shared with the full board. David and I did work on a statement about the Chauvin verdict and about potential protests, of course, which is why this board was rushedly put together last year. Does either David or Madam Chair have a comment on that? Not sure where those.
I can tell you that your comments were shared. Okay.
They were shared with the board.
They were shared with the board. Are there any other comments on this?
Yeah, just to follow up, was that ever, taken for discussion? I believe Sheila, I believe Sheila requested an edit of David, and that edit was made. And then there was talk about this statement going to committees. And David, correct me if I'm wrong, I think an email was also sent to just work on those edits with Madam Chair. And so I'm not sure if I don't think any board members had the chance to approve or deny that. And I think it's important for us to make a statement on peaceful protest and what we believe should happen in these coming months after the Elizabeth City incident and the Chauvin verdict.
I did, David did send me edits. Unfortunately, I think the whole board had the edits, and we were going to discuss some of that tonight, and we are running out of time. But Ms. Genevieve is chairing tonight the important things that we have to look at now. So if anyone wants to, you can put a motion in, and whether we want to go ahead and put that statement, and Dr. Caesar can make sure that statement will go on our webpage.
And let me just ask a question right now before we go any further. Dr. Caesar, do we need to end this meeting within the next, Greer wants to extend it for 15 minutes. Do we need to end it? I don't know what your setup is.
Well, I'll withdraw the motion. I thought that motion was shut down earlier. I do believe that, there's more to talk about, but I thought the motion was already denied.
No, I didn't deny it. I just delayed it. I said I would look at it at the end, toward the end.
Oh, okay. I misheard you.
So are you withdrawing it?
No.
Are you withdrawing it, Greer?
I'll let it stand, actually.
All right. Dr. Caesar, do we have time to extend for 15 minutes?
Yes, the board can vote to extend the meeting for 15 minutes.
All right. Greer made, I delayed Greer's earlier motion to extend the meeting 15 minutes. And Greer, would you like to renew that motion?
Sure, I would, just to discuss one issue.
Seconded.
Is there a second to it?
Mr.
Second.
Blank.
Okay,
Seconded.
thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Jeremy, if you'll do the hand count again.
5, Madam Chair.
All right, and all opposed?
4, Madam Chair.
All right, so we will extend the meeting 15 minutes. Greer?
Thank you, and it may not even
Oh,
take.
wait a minute, I'm sorry. Let me, if I could, don't take the entire 15 minutes because we need to hear from Dr. Caesar.
Okay, I won't. This will be brief. Just wanted to open up discussion. If the board did want to make any statements regarding the Chauvin verdict and, any outcomes there or the Elizabeth City matter, I do believe that more protests are coming as more and more footage is released. And I didn't know if we wanted to get out ahead of it. We had discussed this general idea of getting out ahead of nonviolent protests like this at last month's meeting. And so wanted to hear from other board members.
Is there anyone with their hand up? Deontay?
Yeah, just quickly, Greer, I completely agree, and I think just hearing things that I think it's going to end up being a bad look for us, regardless. I mean, when the full footage is released, it's going to be a bad look for the state of North Carolina. I would love for us to focus on what happened in Elizabeth City that we don't want to happen here, and therefore put it in a policy, as opposed to, hey, this board supports peaceful protest, because that should go without saying for all of us. But so yeah, that's not a rejection of that. I just would love to take advantage of this unfortunate opportunity to move forward from asking again and again the chief of police for these confidential policies, and actually make sure that things that happen there don't happen here. So I guess just wanted to be more specific about it, as opposed to just us having a general "we support peaceful protest" type thing.
Of course.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, one quick comment. I
Okay.
agree with you 100%, Dante. We're not interested in just saying we need peaceful protest. We need to make sure that what the interface between enforcement and the expected protest.
Any
Mr.
other comments?
Was very choppy. Would you please repeat that?
David, would you repeat it because your connection was off, was in and
Sorry
out?
about that. I said that I supported Deontay's comment that our primary focus needs to be affirming the positive interaction between law enforcement and the protesters that we expect.
Any other comments?
Call the question.
Thanks, sir.
All of those who are in favor of the motion to make a statement regarding Elizabeth City, raise your hand. And Jeremy, are you counting?
Yes, ma'am. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Madam Vice Chair.
5 favor. All right. And those opposed would be 4.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any abstentions? Okay, then 4 oppose it. All right, so what is the statement? Then that will have to be worked out, because the comments that I'm hearing is that everyone, Deontay's comment is what happened in Elizabeth City that we don't want to happen here is basically what should be in the statement. So am I correct on that?
That is a correct assessment of what, yeah, that's what I would like to see there, and
Then-
actual policies.
Right, then someone needs to craft the statement.
Maybe Deontay would craft it, and I'll be happy to work with you, Deontay, if you like.
I'm happy to work with them as well to make sure that we hit the specifics of Deontay's request.
Okay. Sounds
And
good.
then
All right, and so can we expect to receive a draft from you guys by a week from today?
yes, I think that's reasonable.
That's reasonable. We can do that.
Thank you. And then once we receive it, we'll act on it. So moving right along.
Gerald
I'm
has a
sorry.
question.
Gerald, I apologize, Gerald. I was
Okay, just
looking
a
down.
quick process question, since a timeliness of statements, are we assuming that we're probably going to have another kind of a meeting before the next meeting to look at the statement and approve what statement we're going to look at?
I think that we probably can do that via email. Once we receive the statement, we can receive comments via email. And then I think an email vote would be appropriate. Am I correct, Dr. Caesar? We can do an email vote?
Yes, that's correct.
And so we could do it that way, Gerald, without having to have it in person.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, would that work for you?
Oh, yes, just
Okay, good.
at the timeliness of it.
Good. So that way it would be timely. Thank you. Are there any other areas that anyone wish to discuss? I'm going to call it quits with Dr. Caesar being our final presenter.
I want to say one thing. We did have a presentation on body cams. We did
Oh,
not.
I apologize, Madam Chair. I lost it. I forgot it. Please forgive me.
That's okay. So that will be on our next agenda. First thing, body cams, which goes with the 21 CP. That was the policy, that our final policy, along with face recognition. So we would do that on our next meeting, since we had ran out of time on this.
Yes. Did everyone receive the memo on body cams and the 21 CP report?
No.
Yeah, Sheila, that's why I didn't cover it, because I didn't think it went out to everyone.
It should have. I check and I send it out again.
All right, please. Thank you.
Okay.
And
No
Dr. Caesar?
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Nothing for the group. I just wanted to introduce Travis again, who's our newest member of the Office of Equity Inclusion. And that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Second.
All right, who seconded it? Johnny?
Johnny.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll see you guys next month. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
See you. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.